Stanley Kubrick remains one of cinema's most mysterious geniuses. The man behind 2001, A Space Odyssey, The Shining, and A Clockwork Orange spoke rarely and revealed even less.
Hey, let's tell Mother.
Tell Mother what?
You know what?
No, I don't think that would be very funny.
He gave few interviews, avoided the Hollywood social circuit, and guarded his private life as fiercely as his creative process. But while he never liked ranking art, Kubrick did occasionally share the films that left a lasting impression on him. In 1963, he submitted a list of his top 10 movies to Cinema magazine, and over the decades, his close collaborators, including Jan Harlan and Anthony Fruin, have shared the titles he continued to discuss with admiration. These films reveal much about what Kubrick valued: emotional honesty, technical mastery, and storytelling that dares to challenge its audience. They range from poetic neorealism and haunting war dramas to a joyful Disney musical and an avant-garde short film about locomotion. Each one in its own way reflects Kubrick's fascination with human behavior and the mechanics of cinema itself. In this countdown, we'll explore the 7 films Stanley Kubrick named as his personal favorites, uncovering what he said about each and why they mattered to him. By the end, you might see traces of Kubrick's genius in every one of them. Number 7, Pacific 231, 1949, directed by Jean Mitry. Jean Mitry's short film, Pacific 231, is only 10 minutes long, but it made an enormous impact on Stanley Kubrick. The film pairs Arthur Honegger's orchestral composition of the same name with a series of dynamic images showing a steam locomotive in motion. Mitry's camera lingers on the pistons, gears, and steam plumes of the train, then cuts rapidly between shots of musicians performing the symphonic piece. Every edit is timed perfectly to the score, creating a rhythmic dance between sound and image. The result feels less like a documentary and more like a symphony of machinery. Kubrick once said that Pacific 231 was one of the most perfectly edited films ever made. According to his longtime assistant Anthony Fruin, he admired the way the images moved with the music, forming a single unified experience. For Kubrick, a director known for precise sound design and the integration of classical music in his films, Mitry's short was proof that editing could be pure visual music. It's easy to see Pacific 231's influence across Kubrick's career. The hypnotic docking sequence in 2001, A Space Odyssey, the balletic violence of A Clockwork Orange, and the orchestral rhythms of Barry Lyndon all echo this same marriage of motion and melody. Kubrick understood that cinema, like music, could evoke emotion through rhythm alone, no dialogue required. He also admired the craftsmanship behind the camera. Before becoming a director, Kubrick was a photographer for Look magazine, and he appreciated the mechanical beauty of industrial imagery. Pacific 231 captured the same fascination he felt while photographing New York's subway workers or factory interiors. In its whirring wheels and pounding pistons, he saw both art and engineering in motion, a perfect metaphor for filmmaking itself. How does music influence the way you experience visual storytelling? Do you think rhythm and editing can move you as deeply as dialogue or performance? Number 6, Mary Poppins, 1964, directed by Robert Stevenson.
You see, in every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. You find the fun, and snap.
At first glance, Mary Poppins might seem an unlikely favorite for Stanley Kubrick, the director who gave us ultraviolence, dystopia, and cosmic isolation. But according to his longtime producer Jan Harlan, Kubrick watched Disney's classic multiple times with his children and spoke of it with genuine affection. Beneath his reputation for cold precision was a father who valued imagination and craftsmanship, and who believed that children's cinema could be just as artful as any adult drama. Set in Edwardian London, Mary Poppins tells the story of the Banks family, whose rigid household is transformed by a magical nanny who floats in on the east wind. Mary, Julie Andrews, in an Oscar-winning role, teaches young Jane and Michael to see wonder in the ordinary, jumping into chalk drawings, dancing on rooftops, and singing about spoonfuls of sugar that make medicine go down. Their stern father, George Banks, learns to balance responsibility with affection, discovering that love matters more than decorum. Kubrick reportedly told Harlan that he thought Julie Andrews was wonderful, and that the film was charming and beautifully made. He admired its combination of technical wizardry and emotional sincerity, the seamless mix of live action and animation, the meticulously choreographed musical numbers, and the warmth that permeates every frame. For a man who prided himself on controlling every detail, Kubrick respected Disney's mastery of illusion. Mary Poppins demonstrated how visual effects could serve story and feeling rather than overshadow them. The film's craftsmanship likely resonated with his perfectionist side. Every dance step, every matte shot, every musical cue fit together like clockwork. Kubrick saw the same discipline he demanded from his own crews, only channeled toward joy instead of menace. In a way, Mary Poppins represents the side of cinema he didn't make, but still revered. Movies that enchant rather than unsettle. Think back to the movies that shaped your own childhood. Which one still feels magical today? And what do you think it reveals about the kind of stories that stay with us forever? Number 5. Bob Le Flambeur, 1956, directed by Jean-Pierre Melville. Among all the directors Stanley Kubrick admired, Jean-Pierre Melville held a special place.
Hein? Quoi? Tiens.
Melville's Bob Le Flambeur, a cool, low-key blend of gangster film and character study, was one Kubrick reportedly called the perfect crime film. That phrase says a lot. Coming from a director who crafted meticulous thrillers like The Killing and A Clockwork Orange, perfect meant something very specific. Not flashiness, but precision. The film follows Bob Montagnier, an aging ex-bank robber living among the late-night gamblers and petty crooks of Montmartre. Once feared, Bob is now something of a legend, an old-school gentleman thief who spends more time at card tables than planning heists. Down on his luck, he decides to rob the safe at the Deauville Casino. He recruits a small crew, plans every step, and seems ready to pull it off. But word leaks out, and the night of the robbery turns into an ironic twist. Bob wanders into the casino before the job, starts playing for fun, and wins a fortune. So caught up in gambling, he forgets the plan entirely. The police arrive, his partners are arrested or killed, and Bob, sitting on piles of winnings, wryly mutters that he might even sue the state for ruining his good luck. Kubrick loved the irony of that ending. Like many of his own films, Bob Le Flambeur is about human folly disguised as genius. He admired Melville's sense of fatalism, the idea that destiny can undo even the most meticulous design. That concept runs through Kubrick's entire body of work, from the doomed space voyage in 2001, A Space Odyssey to the unraveling of control in Dr. Strangelove. He also appreciated the film's minimalist style. Melville shot on real Parisian streets, using handheld cameras and natural light, long before the French New Wave made it fashionable. The atmosphere is intimate and lived in, yet infused with quiet glamour. Kubrick, who began as a photographer, respected how Melville's camera observed without judgment. It wasn't about moralizing, it was about watching people reveal themselves under pressure. When you watch a heist movie, what excites you more? The planning or the inevitable failure? And do you think perfection in cinema lies in control or in the moments when things fall apart? Number 4. La Strada, 1954, directed by Federico Fellini. Of all the filmmakers Stanley Kubrick admired, Federico Fellini may have been the most unexpected. Their styles could hardly be more different, Kubrick's cold precision versus Fellini's warm chaos. Yet Kubrick once remarked that even after seeing only La Strada, he recognized Fellini as the most interesting poetic personality of Italian cinema. For Kubrick, that one film was enough to understand the man's genius. La Strada tells the heartbreaking story of Gelsomina, a poor, naive young woman sold by her mother to the brutish traveling strongman Zampano. Together they roam the Italian countryside, performing cheap circus tricks. He breaking chains across his chest, she clowning and playing the trumpet for coins. Despite her devotion, Zampano treats her cruelly, humiliating and beating her. Along the road, they meet Il Matto, the Fool, a high-wire performer who gently tells Gelsomina that everything in life has a purpose, even a pebble. But Zampano's jealousy leads him to murder Il Matto in a rage, shattering Gelsomina's spirit. She falls into despair and is eventually abandoned. Years later, Zampano learns she has died and breaks down sobbing by the sea, finally understanding too late what he destroyed. Kubrick was moved by how Fellini fused realism and poetry. He appreciated the way La Strada blended grit and grace, tragedy and tenderness, showing how cruelty can coexist with beauty. Fellini's camera doesn't judge. It observes humanity in all its contradictions. That perspective, sympathy for flawed souls, was something Kubrick quietly shared, even if his own worlds were colder. Films like Barry Lyndon and A Clockwork Orange reveal the same fascination with moral blindness, the same tragic irony of characters who cannot comprehend the damage they cause. Visually, La Strada also reflected something Kubrick valued deeply: simplicity of form in service of emotion. Fellini's compositions are uncluttered, his landscapes austere. Each shot feels timeless, sculpted from light and shadow. Kubrick, himself a master of visual architecture, admired directors who could express philosophy through framing. In La Strada, the image of Zampano kneeling alone on the beach, overwhelmed by guilt, contains an entire moral universe. Kubrick once told a young filmmaker that truth is often found in the absurd. Fellini's blend of realism and fantasy embodied that truth. Gelsomina's innocence borders on absurdity, yet through her purity, the film reveals something transcendent. It's a reminder that human frailty, not heroism, defines us. When you watch La Strada, do you see it as a love story, a tragedy, or a moral fable? Why do you think a filmmaker known for control like Kubrick was drawn to Fellini's messy, emotional world? Number 3, Smiles of a Summer Night, 1955, directed by Ingmar Bergman. When Stanley Kubrick was asked which filmmakers he admired most, he often mentioned Max Ophüls and Ingmar Bergman. Of Bergman, he once said he liked Smiles of a Summer Night enormously.
Hur kan en kvinna någonsin älska en man? Kan du säga mig det?
Ja, den frågan och många andra besvaras i sommarnattens leende.
That might surprise those who associate Kubrick only with cold precision and existential dread, because Smiles of a Summer Night is one of Bergman's most playful films, a romantic farce about human desire. But Kubrick saw something profound beneath its elegance and humor, emotional architecture as carefully constructed as any camera movement. Set in Sweden around 1900, the film follows a tangled web of lovers whose paths converge during one enchanted midsummer weekend. Lawyer Frederick Egerman is married to the much younger Anne, a virgin who avoids his affections. Frederick's son Henrik, a tormented seminary student, secretly lusts after his stepmother while seeking solace in their flirtatious maid Petra. Meanwhile, Frederick still harbors feelings for his former lover, the actress Desiree Armfeldt, who herself is entangled with the pompous and jealous Count Carl Magnus Malcolm. When Desiree's mother invites all the parties to her country estate, what follows is a weekend of romantic confusion, duels of wit, and shifting alliances. By dawn, hearts have been broken, healed, and rearranged. Anne elopes with Henrik, Desiree reunites with Frederick, and even the Count makes peace with his wife. Kubrick loved how Bergman turned emotional chaos into choreography. He once described Ophüls as a director who moves the camera like a dancer, and he saw a similar grace in Bergman's handling of people rather than machines. Beneath the witty dialogue and period trappings, Smiles of a Summer Night dissects longing, vanity, and compromise, themes Kubrick himself would explore decades later in Eyes Wide Shut. Both films take place over a single night of revelations. Both suggest that love, though fragile and foolish, remains our only redemption. What also fascinated Kubrick was Bergman's tonal control. He believed that great filmmakers could move between comedy and tragedy without losing truth. In Smiles of a Summer Night, laughter often masks melancholy, and desire is treated as both ridiculous and sacred. Kubrick admired that duality, recognizing it as the essence of human nature, our ability to be foolish and noble in the same breath. Do you think love stories today still balance wit and vulnerability the way Bergman's film does? What modern movie captures that same mix of humor, desire, and truth? Number 2. The Earrings of Madame de 1953. Directed by Max Ophuls. Few filmmakers inspired Stanley Kubrick as profoundly as Max Ophuls. When asked to name the directors he most admired, he replied without hesitation, Max Ophuls and Ingmar Bergman. For Kubrick, Ophuls represented a level of craftsmanship and emotional intelligence that cinema rarely achieved.
Avvistami au passaporto. Dites, avez-vous mon passeport? Non. Mon passeport, s'il vous plaît.
He once told an interviewer that Ophuls' films were so beautifully made, so wonderfully photographed, that every camera movement carried meaning. His favorite among them was The Earrings of Madame de, a story of love, fate, and the quiet devastation of social hypocrisy. Set in Belle Époque Paris, the film begins with a deceptively trivial gesture. The elegant Countess Louise de sells a pair of diamond earrings, wedding gifts from her husband, General André de, to pay off debts. She lies to him, claiming she lost them. But when the general later buys the same earrings back for his mistress and they are resold in Constantinople, they eventually end up with an Italian diplomat, Baron Donati. Donati meets Louise, unaware of their history, and gives the earrings to her as a token of love. The circle of deception closes when André discovers the truth. He forces Donati to sell the earrings and challenges him to a duel. As the men fight, Louise, overcome with guilt and heartbreak, collapses in a church, praying before the earrings, now displayed as a religious offering. Kubrick admired this film not only for its narrative symmetry, but for its visual grace. Ophuls' camera glides through ballrooms, mirrors, and staircases with a rhythm that feels like music. Every movement reflects the shifting emotions of his characters: passion, denial, pride, and regret. Kubrick, who believed that the camera should compose thought, saw in Ophuls' technique the highest form of cinematic language. Thematically, Madame de appealed to Kubrick's fascination with irony and fate. The earrings, passing from hand to hand, become silent witnesses to human weakness. They symbolize how love and vanity intertwine, how our attempts to control life's appearances inevitably expose what we wish to hide. Kubrick, ever skeptical of human self-deception, would echo these ideas decades later in Barry Lyndon and Eyes Wide Shut. Both stories of emotional blindness framed by exquisite artifice. There's also something deeply Kubrickian in Ophuls' detachment. He doesn't condemn his characters, he observes them with empathy and precision. His world is beautiful yet merciless, where elegance masks pain and love is both salvation and punishment. Kubrick once told John Harlan that he was drawn to Ophuls because he could move a camera like no one else, and he understood how fragile people are. That combination, technical mastery and moral insight, became a model for Kubrick's own work. The earrings in Ophuls' film connect every act of deceit and desire. What object from any movie do you think carries that same emotional weight? How can something material reveal so much about the human heart? Number 1. The Battle of Algiers, 1966, directed by Gillo Pontecorvo.
Vous arrivez à la moyenne de 4,2 attentats par jour. Oui, il faut distinguer les attaques individuelles.
At the very top of Stanley Kubrick's personal canon sat a film that was neither grandly philosophical nor visually ornate, but brutally real. The Battle of Algiers is a black and white reconstruction of the Algerian struggle for independence from France, filmed in the style of a newsreel. For Kubrick, who spent his life designing controlled, immaculate worlds, Pontecorvo's quasi-documentary chaos was a revelation. He called it a false documentary, but added that it was very impressive, telling his assistant Anthony Fruin that no one could truly understand the power of cinema without seeing it. The film begins in 1957 with French paratroopers closing in on a group of FLN insurgents hiding in the Kasbah. From there, it flashes back to 1954, charting how the Algerian National Liberation Front organized its urban resistance, planting bombs in cafes, assassinating police officers, and provoking massive crackdowns. French troops retaliate with torture and collective punishment. The film's final act returns to the present, showing the FLN crushed militarily but morally undefeated. Within a few years, the uprising reignites and French rule collapses. Kubrick was fascinated by the film's journalistic immediacy. Pontecorvo used handheld cameras, non-professional actors, and on-location shooting to blur the line between fiction and reportage. To Kubrick, that technique was pure cinema, storytelling stripped of sentimentality or artifice. He admired how Pontecorvo let events speak for themselves, forcing the audience to confront the uncomfortable symmetry between the occupiers and the occupied. The French justify torture in the name of order. The Algerians justify terror in the name of freedom. There are no heroes, only human beings caught in history's machinery. That moral ambiguity resonated deeply with Kubrick. Paths of Glory, his own 1957 anti-war film, shared the same conviction, that war corrupts everyone it touches. Like Pontecorvo, he distrusted propaganda from either side. Both men rejected emotional manipulation, preferring to engage the intellect. Kubrick once remarked that the Battle of Algiers achieved something almost impossible. It made politics cinematic without turning it into spectacle. He also admired its editing. The film's rhythm, alternating between quiet suspense and explosive violence, created what Kubrick described as documentary tension, the sense that something inevitable is unfolding before our eyes. Its use of Ennio Morricone's insistent drumbeat score reminded him how music could act as both commentary and propulsion, an idea he would exploit in Full Metal Jacket and A Clockwork Orange. In private conversations, Kubrick reportedly said that if young directors wanted to learn how to control tone and rhythm, they should study the Battle of Algiers. It was, he believed, a masterclass in visual clarity and moral complexity, proof that cinema could tackle the hardest truths without moralizing. For Kubrick, who spent his career exposing the absurdities of violence and authority, Pontecorvo's film was more than a political statement. It was a mirror. The French general's weary admission that to conquer is easy, to govern is harder, could have come from any of Kubrick's own protagonists, men who mistake control for understanding. The Battle of Algiers refuses to comfort the viewer. Do you think that's why Kubrick respected it so much? How do you respond to films that challenge rather than reassure you? Stanley Kubrick's list of favorite films reads like a map of his own artistic DNA, rigorous, eclectic, and fearless. Each title reflects an aspect of what made him such an uncompromising filmmaker. The Battle of Algiers mirrors his fascination with power and moral ambiguity. The Earrings of Madame de demonstrates his admiration for precision and emotional geometry. And Smiles of a Summer Night reveals that beneath his icy intellect lay an appreciation for wit, vulnerability, and human folly. Even lighter choices like Mary Poppins remind us that Kubrick, often caricatured as obsessive and cold, also valued wonder and the innocence of storytelling. Taken together, his favorites reveal a man who sought balance, discipline and freedom, intellect and emotion, irony and sincerity. Perhaps that's why his own films remain timeless. They challenge us while trusting us to find meaning on our own. So, what do you make of Kubrick's list? Which of these masterpieces have you seen, and which surprised you most? More importantly, which film, however humble or grand, has changed the way you see the world? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the minds of cinema's greats.